Yeah.
When I go up there, I'm going to hand this to you. When I go up there, I'm going to hand this to you.
2008
When I go
was
up.
an interesting
Yeah.
year.
What I
First
gotta
off, we had 219 teams. Okay, we had one team jump right out of the box by winning 2 of the first 4 races of the year, and of course that set them in first place for almost the entire year. Turns out this year only 4 teams actually held the first place spot for the year. We only had 4 first place people in first place this year.
It's the last one that counts.
As we entered the chase, we had many teams with 5 drivers in the chase. But when NASCAR went to Richmond, Casey Kane and David Reagan both had legitimate shots to make the chase. If Kane had made it, we would have had 1 clear champion this year. If Reagan had made it, we would have had about 3 teams fighting for the championship. But instead, Kane and Reagan didn't make it, and we ended up with about 17 teams this year who had realistic shots at making the top 10. So I thought it was a very interesting year. In the end, there was close battles all through the top 10, and it made for a very competitive year and a very interesting year to watch, and one of the most interesting ones that I've had, and I've been doing this for about 10 years now. So that was 2008. All right, our 10th place winner, which you'll have to pick up for him. Our 10th place winner. In 2008, there was only 4 teams that held a top spot at some point during the year. And this is one of those teams. In week 3 of the season, after stringing together a 2nd and a 13th, this team moved into first place. This team then fell from first the next week, but never fell from the top 15 for the entire year. Definitely a model of consistency. This team never won a race the entire year, but had only 2 top 5s for the whole year. Yet they hung around the top 10 or top 15 for the entire year. When the chase hit, the same thing. They were hanging around the top 10. But in week 31, they put together a string of strong finishes for 5 races in a row, and they climbed to 6th place with 1 race to go. But at Homestead, the consistency seemed to suffer, and they had their worst race of the year. They were consistent the entire year until Homestead, and they finished 164th place at Homestead, and it dropped them into 10th place, and that's where they finished. So at the end, the team hung around 10th for most of the year, and they ended up in 10th. And so our 10th place winner for 2008 is Stratosphere Racing.
Yeah, that's good.
You need to wait, Ed.
I can move back here.
Here, wait a minute.
I think it's the bottom switch going all the way over. No, the other way. There you go. Right back here by the pool table. If you want to go back there.
Yeah, I can see here as long as everybody can hear me.
Okay.
All right. 9th place. Our 9th place team for 2008. The most anticipated race of the year, of course, is the Daytona 500. That's like the Super Bowl for racing. This team, our 9th place team, they started the year, with the first win of the year. They won at Daytona 500. 3 weeks later, our 9th place team, they pull off a 2nd win at Atlanta. 4 weeks into the season, this team has now won 2 of the first 4 races. Of course, this moves them back into first place. And they ended up staying in first place all the way through the driver changes, all the way up through the chase. At the driver changes, they made no changes. They were really pulling out in first place. They had quite a lead on first, so they made no driver changes. They continue to hold first every week all the way up to the chase. And at the chase, they still held first place. It wasn't until a series of bad runs by Kyle Busch that this team finally began to feel the pressure. We finally had somebody starting to close in on this team. In week 29, they finally fell out of first place. Kyle Busch continued to struggle, and this team had Sam Hornish, who failed to qualify twice on him. And that really hurt him. At that point, it was a matter of just trying to hang on to the top 10. And they ended up finishing 9th for the year. But I will say it was a strong year for this team. They won Daytona, they won Atlanta, they finished in the top 5 4 times, they finished in the top 10 6 times, and they held on to first place for 26 weeks. Our 9th place team for 2008 is Smoke D&D.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Good deal, Tony. Very good.
Good year. 8th place for 2008. If you look up the word consistency, you may find this team in the definition. This team in 8th place did not win a single race and never once finished in the top 10 of any race.
Told her on the way here.
Yet if you also look at it, when I looked at the team, they never had a bad race. They had decent races every race all year long. As a matter of fact, this team with no top 10s at all was very close to placing 6 drivers in the chase. If Reagan had made the chase, this team probably would have won the championship. And I'm telling you right now, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've never had a team win a championship that never even won a top 10. So it was quite a year. To add to the mystery, this 8th place team only finished 1 point out of 7th. So it was hard to find a lot of highlights for this team. But this year's 8th place team, very, very consistent. And it was their first year in the league. So please show your appreciation for our 8th place team this year, Backfire Racing.
All right, Backfire.
Our 7th place team. This year's 7th place team struggled up to the driver's changes. They really struggled in the first part of the year until we got to the driver's changes. Of course, then I looked at their first team they had submitted. They had Waltrip and Mayfield. Good, John. But at the driver's changes, they made some good picks. The best of which was Matt Kenseth, because no other team in the top 10 had Matt Kenseth. So as Kenseth did, so did this team. When the chase hit, they had the one and only combination of Kyle Busch, Hamlin, Biffle, Jr., and Kenseth. And that combination threw them immediately into 2nd place. As soon as the chase hit, right to 2nd place they went. In the end, though, Kyle Busch had a bad chase, and so did Kenseth. Kyle Busch finished 10th, and Kenseth finished 11th. And so this team eventually fell from 2nd place in the chase and fell down to 10th. They fell to 10th place with 1 race to go. And they were only 48 points out of falling out of 10th. But at Homestead, his drivers ran real well. And the team moved from 10th all the way up to 7th in the final race of the year. And of course, they beat out the 8th place team by 1 point. And actually, when I looked at it, if Kenseth hadn't run out of gas on the last lap,
I would have won $100 last week.
if Kenseth hadn't run out of gas on the last lap, they would have actually finished higher.
Could you tell me the spot?
So, some good driver changes in week 11, and a strong race in the final race of the year at Homestead, and the 1 win at California.
Half.
We have our 7th place. We have our 7th place team for 2008. Last minute.
No more Mayfield. And
Mayfield and
Thanks, man.
Good job.
7th place. By 1 point.
I think we should
And
split that.
you know, God's is that half a race.
No, it's Kansas leading those laps.
No, Casey King.
6th place for 2008. Our 6th place team started the year pretty good. Our 6th place team won at Bristol in week number 5. And that jumped them into the top 15. A week later, they jumped into the top 10. So they started